At 10, the Israeli military says children are among the many dead massacred by Hamas gunmen in southern Israel. Tonight, the harrowing details are beginning to emerge. Whole families were murdered in this small village. It's being described as a massacre.
And I've been to that place, Kibbutz Kfar Aza, a small community on the Gaza wire. Israeli troops only fully recaptured it this morning.
For a fourth night, Israeli vengeance. Gaza bombarded with the number of dead across the frontier, more than 800. The UN is warning of a humanitarian catastrophe.
This area was targeted heavily last night. Hundreds of airstrikes destroyed many buildings in this area.
And tonight we hear from one mother whose children were kidnapped by the Hamas gunmen.
Those barbarians took kids out of their houses and out of their beds and just kidnapped them.
Also on the programme, interrupted by a protester, but the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer stays on course at his party's conference and promises a decade of national renewal if Labour win the next election. And after 14 years at the helm, Holly Willoughby announces she is quitting ITV's This Morning.
And on BBC London, we go deep underground to get the first look at the tunnelling which will make the hotly debated high-speed rail project a reality. Join us at 10:30.
They're still 4 days on collecting the bodies of the dead. Good evening. We're live in Jerusalem, where the full horror and ferocity of last Saturday's attack by Hamas gunmen in southern Israel is becoming clear. Hamas is a group designated as a terror organization by many Western governments, including the UK, and it's committed to Israel's destruction. Well, throughout the day here, the Israeli military has been recovering the bodies of whole families, including several children cut down in a rural community just a mile from the border with Gaza. Israeli soldiers on the scene describe it as a massacre. The body bags, yet more reason, say the Israelis, for vengeance, and thousands of troops remain massed on the border with Gaza tonight, ready for what could be a full-scale ground invasion. Tonight we'll hear from our correspondents right across the region. Our international editor, Jeremy Bowen, has been to the village of Kfar Aza, where the bodies today have been recovered. Lucy Williamson has been to the area near Rahim, where hundreds were murdered at a music festival. And we'll be inside Gaza itself, under siege tonight, with our correspondent Rushdie Abu Alouf. But our first report tonight is with Jeremy, who's live in Ashkelon. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Clive. And yeah, I went to Kibbutz Kfar Aza with the Israeli army earlier on today. There was still shooting going on there when we arrived, and they said that they'd only fully recaptured it earlier that morning. Now, what became very clear was that because of the fact it took 3 days of fighting to try to get, because they did try to get the bodies earlier on, they tried to recover them from the wreckage, but they couldn't because the fighting was still continuing. So when I went there, they were recovering the bodies of civilians and making some gruesome discoveries, and some viewers may find some of the content in my report disturbing. The first few days of war at this small Israeli community called Kfar Aza are a microcosm of Israel's trauma and a glimpse of what might come next. Israeli troops only seized back full control of the kibbutz this morning. It's one of a series of small Israeli villages along the Gaza wire. When we arrived, they were still firing on houses across on the Gaza side. Israeli soldiers started their assault here at around 6 o'clock on Saturday evening, 12 hours or so after Hamas attacked. And during that day, Hamas carried out a massacre. Kfar Aza was taken by surprise, like everywhere else Hamas attacked. The kibbutz guard, armed civilian volunteers, died fighting back. Dead Hamas gunmen are decomposing where they were killed. The evidence is that they stormed through the kibbutz, killing families, including babies. Only this morning could Israeli troops finish recovering all the civilians Hamas killed.
They have just jihad machine to kill everybody, without weapons, without nothing, just normal citizens that want to take their breakfast, and that's all. And they kill them, and they cut some of their heads. It's a aggressive thing to see. It's very difficult to see it. But we must remember who is the enemy and what our mission. Our mission is the justice. We're in the right side, and all the world needs to be behind us.
The woman under this cover, another officer said, was decapitated. He said they killed her in her front garden. Even for experienced soldiers, fighting their way back in against a determined enemy was hard going. How difficult was the fighting?
I cannot imagine.
Have you ever had to do anything like this before as a soldier?
No, not like this.
What happens next? What do you do next? What does Israel do next?
I don't know. I would do what I will tell me to do. I will do. I hope that we will go inside.
Into Gaza?
Yeah.
That's going to be tough fighting.
Yeah, we're ready for it.
The bodies of the dead Israeli civilians will have to be identified. Their murder was, without doubt, a war crime. But what about the Palestinian civilians Israel is killing in attacks on Hamas?
As you know, all armies have obligations under the laws of war to protect civilian life, even in war zones. Are you doing this with this level of airstrikes that are going on at the moment, and any ground operation that might happen?
I'm sure that we fight for our value and our culture all our life. And you fought with value and you keep your value in the same time. And I know that we will be very aggressive and very strong, but we keep our moral and our value. We are Israeli, we are Jewish, and war is a very difficult theater, a lot of problem. People that stay in the battlefield are suffer a lot. You can see what's happening here. But we come to kill an enemy, not a civilian in their bed.
But in only a few days, Israel has inflicted immense damage in Gaza. They've cut off supplies of food, water and power and killed hundreds of civilians. Palestinian suffering, Israel says, is the responsibility of Hamas. Israel's already been accused of breaking the laws of war, and that will get louder as more Palestinian civilians are wounded and killed. At Kfar Aza, Israeli troops were thinking of what's next, perhaps a ground invasion of Gaza. It was tough enough for the Israelis to come in to recapture this area, these small border communities. It is a different order of military challenge to cross the wire, to get into Gaza, potentially to fight house to house at a time when Hamas will have made its plans and will be waiting. Some of these men are moving north in case war starts with Hezbollah, the powerful Lebanese militia backed by Iran. What happened here is why Israel is shaken to its core, why it insists it must break Hamas, and it points to the danger and uncertainty ahead. Jeremy Bone, BBC News, Kfar Aza.
We're going to get a little bit more from Jeremy in a few minutes, but Israeli retribution so far has come from above, from the skies, with airstrikes on targets in Gaza, reducing already battered and poor neighborhoods to smoking ruins. Now, look at this footage released by the Israeli military, and it shows building after building turned to rubble. Palestinian health officials say the number of people killed in Gaza since the weekend has now risen to at least 830, with well over 4,000 injured. While getting in and out of Gaza is almost impossible now, the borders are sealed, but the BBC has a rare insight into the situation on the ground with our correspondent Rushdie Abu Alouf. Now, he's lived there his entire life, and while it's just too dangerous for him to be reporting live tonight, he has sent us this update.
Very quickly, if we can see the scale of destruction in this neighborhood, it's called Rimal neighborhood. It's the economic hub for Gaza that has been completely targeted. Yesterday, many buildings were destroyed. Behind me is the 11-story building that was knocked down 2 days ago, but the destruction in this area is quite recently. It's been targeted last night. Israel said they have carried out 200 airstrikes targeting the Hamas infrastructure. In fact, they hit many buildings, government buildings belong to the Hamas-run authority, but look to the scale of destruction in the area and how the civilian homes were completely affected, and some of them were completely destroyed.
I lost everything. My house, my shop has been destroyed completely. Where do we go? We have become homeless.
Well, this gentleman just told us that we have to leave the area because it seems that the Israelis are warning the resident of that area that they should leave. They are going to target another building in the area. But look to the scale of destruction. This is happening overnight with Israeli targeting houses, shops, ministries, mosques, everything. The whole neighborhood was leveled to zero. This is one of the most important economic hubs for Gaza, where, as you can see, most of the shops were damaged, houses were damaged, infrastructure, street. This is the street that leads to the southern part of the city. It's completely blocked.
Rushdie Abu Alouf there, our man on the ground in Gaza, one of very few journalists still operating there at the moment. Well, tonight, President Biden described the killings of Israeli civilians by Hamas as an act of sheer evil, and he pledged full US support to Israel as it responds. Now, he said he would make sure the country received everything it needed, including more ammunition and air defense missiles. He also added that the White House was ready to order extra US military assets here to this region to act as a deterrent.
Let me say again, to any country, any organization, anyone thinking of taking advantage of this situation, I have one word: don't. Don't. Our hearts may be broken, but our resolve is clear.
The president there speaking in the last few hours. Let's return to Jeremy now, who joins me from the city of Ashkelon in southern Israel. Jeremy, what everyone is wondering, are we getting any closer to what looks like a ground offensive in your estimation?
I think my guess is that we are on. What am I basing that on? Well, first of all, the maximal goals that Prime Minister Netanyahu has set. What he said is that not only must Israel make Hamas pay a terrible price for what happened, he also said that he wants to change the power equation in Gaza and to send a lesson to Israel's enemies that will last for more than one generation. You don't do that simply through airstrikes. However, having been with the Israeli army for much of the day today, I would say that they are still trying to secure the area. There was shooting, as you saw in my piece perhaps, earlier on, as we arrived at the kibbutz in southern Israel, where these killings have been discovered. And in this city tonight, Ashkelon, there's been a security alert because there were some gunmen on the loose. I think one of them was killed. There was a lot of concern and warnings to people to stay inside. So I think they want to secure their rear before they decide they might want to push into Gaza. But certainly, Clive, I'd say at the moment all the indications are still pointing towards a ground offensive, and a big one too.
Sure. Okay. Jeremy, thank you for that, and to the rest of the team there in Ashkelon in southern Israel. Well, some of the first reports of Saturday's attack came from eyewitnesses at a music festival in Reim in southern Israel near the border with Gaza. Hamas gunmen arrived in force and killed at least 260 people there. Now, the attackers then continued their rampage into the surrounding villages. And our Middle East correspondent, Lucy Williamson, has been to the area around Reim to hear the testimony of people there who saw and heard the violence unfold. Another warning, you may find some of her report distressing.
The road that led to an open-air party, now an open-air crime scene. The path of Hamas gunmen mapped by their weapons and their bodies. Their target, a festival site where hundreds died. The ground zero of this multi-pronged attack. Among the dead, the passengers of this car, gunned down as they fled. Bodies and debris still line the route into this festival site. Police have told us this vehicle was used by Hamas militants, and you can still see the ground here is covered with the remains of weapons, the uniforms they used. Days on from this attack, families all across this area are still trying to trace exactly what happened to their loved ones. 4 members of Yaniv's family are listed among the hostages kidnapped by militants. Among them his nephews, 12-year-old Yagil and 16-year-old Or. The boys phoned their mother as gunmen took them from a nearby house.
And then they said they hear someone breaking into the door and walking in the house. About 10 minutes later, I heard people speaking in Arabic outside the door. The door opened and I could hear my youngest say, "Don't take me, I'm too young." That was the last time I heard from them. Those barbarians took kids out of their houses and out of their beds and just kidnapped them, keeping them hostage.
Their father and his girlfriend are also missing. This video appears to show them in the hands of militants.
But the waiting is killing. You can see my mom broken. That's the hardest part for me. I can be strong. I can lift up all my family, but it's hard to see my mom breaking.
As Israel continues to pound targets in Gaza, Hamas has threatened to begin executing hostages in response. With every strike, some see the face of Israel's military might. Renana sees the faces of her children. Lucy Williamson, BBC News, Southern Israel.
It is a hallmark of all the violence of recent days that youngsters and children have been victims. The BBC knows of many young people who were kidnapped by Hamas. The images of boys and girls and babies in their mothers' arms being led away are some of the most harrowing of this war so far. Caroline Hawley has that story.
Imagine that you know and love these children. All are now hostages in Gaza. And the wait, the absence of news, is torture. This is 30-year-old Israeli mother Shiri on Saturday morning in the hands of her captors. Still in her arms, her 9-month-old baby Kafir and her 4-year-old Ariel. They were kidnapped from their kibbutz near the border with Gaza. Their father, her husband Yarden, was also taken.
I really hope that she's okay. I really hope that they didn't separate the kids from her. The babies that torn up from their bed 6 a.m. on Saturday morning on a holiday in Israel. They were asleep in their beds. my feeling that my family is over there, that I don't know how they treat them. And I know that there is 9 months baby that without his food, without his diapers.
These are pictures of more children held hostage, shared with Danish television by their mother, Mayan. They're her 8-year-old and 15-year-old girls, and she had this message for them.
I will do anything. We will do anything to get you back. Do what your hostage takers tell you. Be strong. You are heroes. The whole country is with you and everyone else who is being held hostage. Everybody loves you.
We don't know all of the children taken hostage, but along with Ariel and Kafir, we know of 12-year-old Erez and his sister Saha, and sisters Raz and Aviv, who are 5 and 3. As Israeli airstrikes flatten buildings in Gaza, nobody knows what's happening to them, and now the lives of Palestinian children are also being taken and torn apart. Caroline Hawley, BBC News.
The young victims on both sides. Well, what now for Israel and Gaza, for the men with the guns and the civilians on both sides caught in between? They face off across a frontier marked so indelibly in blood. Two seemingly irreconcilable foes in a region where peace has long been just another casualty. That's it from us here in Jerusalem. With that, it's back to you, Sophie, in the studio.
Clive, thank you. Well, this is a war that is very close to home for many communities in Britain. Our religion editor, Alim Makboul, looks at how families here have been affected.
Ahmed Najjar is an economist in London. He tells of bad news he received from the place he grew up, Gaza.
One of my cousins, we just found out that he was killed on Saturday in the evening.
Ahmed says he's worried for the rest of his extended family with so many airstrikes.
As you can imagine, the situation there is not easy to really find out how people were killed or whether they are under the rubble or whether they are still alive.
Well, for so many people in this country, these horrors feel like they're being played out much closer than in a distant land. And even if they don't have direct ties to the victims, in many cases, it's still having an impact on daily life. With fears of a rise in anti-Semitism, there's been an increase in security around a lot of Jewish schools.
There's police when the peak time was, and there was more staff generally around. All the senior leadership team were around as well.
So you come into school and everyone's sort of in the same boat. Everyone's just very worried, and everyone's just sort of together, trying to hope for the best.
Many British Jews have talked of a profound sense of connection to Jews in pain wherever they are. Others really are living a nightmare.
There's nothing left. Nothing is left there.
Sharon Lifshitz has heard nothing from her ill mother and peace activist father since this Israeli community was attacked and burnt to the ground. She's worried about reprisals if she even shows their pictures.
There is a lot of forces that try to make us feel that the others are not human, and I think we have to go back to remembering that these are humans. This is my mum, but she could be your mum, you know, and she could be anyone's mum, and I don't wish that on anyone.
Sharon is still clinging to the hope her parents will be returned to safety. Alim Makboul, BBC News in London.
The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has promised a decade of national renewal for Britain. He told the Labour Party conference in Liverpool that if elected, he would introduce reforms to the NHS, invest in education and build 1.5 million new homes. Sir Keir's speech was briefly interrupted at the start by a protester who poured glitter all over him. A 28-year-old man was arrested. Our political editor, Chris Mason, reports from Liverpool.
Whatever you do, don't get your placard upside down. Careful control of choreography, a big part of any party conference. A big part, that is, until the unexpected happens at just the moment Keir Starmer was about to begin.
True democracy is citizen-led. Politics needs an update.
A protester demanding a different voting system soon found himself on the floor and horizontal, but still protesting.
Let people decide!
Keir Starmer decided to dispense with his jacket and put up with the glitter on his shirt and in his hair.
He thinks that bothers me. He doesn't know me.
Next to what he had planned to say and his big picture message. His claim the country's in a mess, but Labour can sort it out.
What is broken can be repaired. What is ruined can be rebuilt. Wounds do heal.
This is a party that tore itself apart over anti-Semitism being condemned for being anti-Jewish under the last leader, Jeremy Corbyn. Keir Starmer sought to be categoric and unequivocal about what he called the appalling events in Israel in the last few days.
I utterly condemn the senseless murder of men, women and children, including British citizens, in cold blood by the terrorists of Hamas. This party... This party believes in the two-state solution, a Palestinian state alongside a safe and secure Israel.
From the world stage to back here, a big part of this speech was about building more homes, 1.5 million of them in 5 years. Speeding up planning, building in what he called the grey belt, car parks and scrubland, and building new towns.
Sometimes the old Labour ideas are right for new times. We'll get shovels in the ground, cranes in the sky, and build the next generation of Labour new towns.
What stood out today was not just the traditional Tory bashing of a Labour get-together. Yes, he called Rishi Sunak one of the shallow men and women of Westminster and said the Conservatives had wrecked the economy. But there was this direct pitch to Tory supporters to switch to Labour.
So if you are a Conservative voter who despairs of this, if you look in horror at the descent of your party into the murky waters of populism and conspiracy, with no argument for economic change, if you feel our country needs a party that conserves, you can join it. It's this Labour Party.
A Labour Party that conserves, he claimed. And he sought to snatch more political clothes the Conservatives often claim as their own.
We say yes to sound money, yes to cutting waste and debt, embrace the need for stability. Fiscal responsibility is non-negotiable.
In other words, Keir Starmer is trying to persuade you that you can trust him with your money and Labour with governing.
We've dragged this party back to service, and we can do the same for politics. I grew up working class. I've felt the anxiety of a cost of living crisis before, and until your family can see the way out, I will fight for you. Walk towards a decade of national renewal. Britain can, Britain will get its future back. Thank you, conference.
This was Keir Starmer dealing with a protester and against a backdrop of horror in the Middle East, attempting to present himself as an alternative Prime Minister. Activists here are nervously confident. Confident because they hope they can win. Nervous because they know they have to overhaul a huge Conservative majority.
It was great. I was quite scared, I'll be honest, at the beginning with the guy ran on and threw. I didn't know what they were throwing at him. But he didn't get flustered by it and just went for it.
He's not promising the earth, but he is promising the change this country needs. I'm so glad that people who are looking in on the Labour conference this week will see the Keir Starmer I know, tough, gritty and in touch with the British people. People demand democracy. People demand...
The protester had a free ride away courtesy of Merseyside police, raising questions about conference security, as Keir Starmer hopes he's provided some answers about who he is and what he'd actually do if he wins. Chris Mason, BBC News in Liverpool.
The TV presenter Holly Willoughby has announced she is quitting the ITV show this morning after 14 years. She says she made the decision for her and her family. It comes just days after a man appeared in court charged in connection with an alleged plot to kidnap her. Here's our entertainment correspondent, Lieu Mazimba.
September 2009, Holly Willoughby's first appearance.
Welcome.
Thank you.
How do you feel?
Hello. Like this isn't really happening.
And for much of the next 14 years, it was her on-screen relationship with her co-host Philip Schofield that kept daytime television viewers constantly entertained.
Yeah!
With a variety of guests.
Hang on a minute, you've just been eating salty worms?
And items ranging from light-hearted challenges to scientific surprises.
Whoa! Oh, wow-wee!
She announced her departure on social media, saying to everyone who's ever worked on the show over the years, thank you so much. This is such a difficult goodbye. You're incredible, and I forever will be proud of what we've done together. Most of all, thank you to the wonderful viewers. You've been so loyal, so supportive, and the very best company every day. She didn't specify her reasons for leaving, but last week a man appeared at Chelmsford Magistrates Court, charged with planning her kidnap and murder. And earlier this year, Philip Schofield left the programme after lying about a relationship with a work colleague.
On Tomorrow's This Morning.
She and the audience didn't know at the time, but this last week was her final appearance. ITV says they're looking forward to working with her on other programmes in the future.
See you tomorrow.
Lieu Mazimba, BBC News.
Stadiums in England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland will all host the Euro 2028 men's football tournament. UEFA announced its decision today after Turkey pulled out of the bidding process last week. With 10 venues in 9 cities, Euro 2028 is expected to bring in more than £2 billion for the economy. Our sports editor, Dan Roan, reports.
The host for the UEFA Euro 2028 is United Kingdom and the Republic of Ireland.
It felt a formality, but finally it was official. Confirmation that the 5 nations behind this bid would stage their biggest sports event since London 2012. The face of today's presentation telling me just how much it meant.
Having a major tournament now internationally in our country, as well as obviously the UK and Ireland, is massively important, and yeah, glad I could be a part of it again.
With almost 3 million tickets available, England have 6 host stadia, alongside a revamped Hampden Park in Glasgow, the Principality Stadium in Cardiff, where the opening match is set to take place, Dublin's Aviva Stadium and Northern Ireland's Casement Park. Traditionally a home of Gaelic games in predominantly Catholic West Belfast, a decade has now passed since this historic but derelict venue last witnessed live sport. Since then, planning problems, legal battles and political deadlock have seen the redevelopment of Casement Park delayed and the costs have increased. But the hope of many is that the Euros could be the impetus for a project that they believe can be a force for reconciliation.
The tournament will be played on the 30th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, and I think that's an absolute message across the islands and across the world about peace in a post-conflict environment.
We're assured by the government that Casement will be built, and it will be built on time, for us to show how brilliant a country Northern Ireland is.
Wembley's set to stage the final, as it did 2 years ago as part of an 11-country tournament, but that was marred by chaotic scenes of fan disorder.
We want the reputation for hosting the most safe competitions and most enjoyable. You know, nobody wants to come and feel uncomfortable.
Time for a look at the weather now. Chris Fawkes is here with all the latest. Chris.
Hi Sophie, and so far this month we've had some big contrasts, certainly for rainfall across parts of southern England. Some places haven't even had a single drop of rain, but it's been a different story further north in Scotland, where at Boyne in Aberdeenshire, we've already had 113 millimetres of rain. That's already over the October monthly average, and of course we're only a third of the way through the month. And then there were these temperature contrasts we had today. 26 degrees in Writtle near Chelmsford in Essex, compared with just 13 in Lerwick behind a cold front. What happens over the next few days, this colder air is going to be pushing its way southwards, and with that we'll see something that feels a bit more like autumn. Temperatures returning to average for the time of year for many. And for some of us, that cooler air is on the way over the next 12 hours or so. Here's our cold front moving the rain band across from Scotland and Northern Ireland, eventually bringing the rain into parts of northern England and Wales. Mild for England and Wales, colder air getting into Scotland with temperatures dropping down into single figures. So here, a chilly start to the day. Now this weather front is going to be very slow moving through the day on Wednesday. Some fairly heavy bursts of rain, particularly for the hills of Mid Wales, could cause 1 or 2 issues. The rain extending across the Midlands into parts of Lincolnshire. South of that, it's warm with some sunshine breaking through the cloud, temperatures in the low 20s. But for Scotland, Northern Ireland and a good part of Northern England, those temperatures will be quite a bit lower than those of today. Heading into Thursday, the dregs of that same weather front across more southern regions of England and Wales, just bringing a few spots of light rain and drizzle. A lot of sunshine further north with a few blustery showers continuing to affect northern areas of Scotland. Cooler for many, the warm air though still hanging on across the far south. We then get a pulse of rain working in across England and Wales for Friday, with the cooler air extending right across the country as we head into Saturday. Actually, it'll be cool enough with showers in northern Scotland, see a bit of snow over the mountain tops. Sophie.
Chris, thank you. And that's it from the BBC News at 10. It's time now for the news where you are. Good night.